Have you ever walked into a room and felt like no one even noticed? Like your presence didn't make a ripple in the flow of other people's lives? Most of us have, especially those of us who quietly carry dreams. We're too scared to speak aloud. But what if the very thing that made you invisible became the key to everything you ever wanted? Jessica Parker never set out to be a hero. In fact, she worked hard not to be noticed. At 28, she was a hotel cleaner at a luxury skyscraper in downtown Chicago, where billionaires booked penthouses and global CEOs discussed market-shifting deals over polished boardroom tables. But Jessica didn't serve wine or close deals. She vacuumed floors and scrubbed glass so spotless you'd forget there was anything between you and the city skyline. But there was more to Jessica than rubber gloves and bleach. At night in her one-bedroom apartment where silence felt heavy, she spoke to herself in Mandarin. Not fluently at first, just clumsy phrases, broken tones. It started as a promise to her late mother, a woman who dreamed of traveling the world but never got the chance. After cancer took her far too soon, Jessica had found her mother's old language textbooks in a dusty box labeled Someday. She flipped through them that night, her hands shaking, grief still raw. "I'll see it for you, Mom," she whispered. That moment spoken to no one, but the silence became her turning point. She downloaded a free language app, then another. She started watching YouTube videos of native Chinese speakers, mimicking their accents, studying their rhythm. When other people scrolled social media, Jessica was learning how to introduce herself, how to ask for directions, how to explain concepts like guanxi and face cultural values that underpin Chinese relationships and business etiquette. Nobody knew this side of her. At the hotel, she kept her head down. Management barely acknowledged her. Other staff often forgot her name, except for one Henry, a weathered night security guard with tired eyes and an old soul. He once caught her writing Chinese characters in a notebook. "You've got gold in your hands," Kitty told her, "but you walk like you're made of dust." What Henry said is something that many of us need to hear. There are people all around us living double lives, not in the sense of deception, but in the sense of suppression. The janitor who plays classical piano better than a concert pianist. The waitress who writes poetry that could make the world weep. The bus driver who solves physics equations for fun. These people walk among us unseen because society rarely rewards quiet brilliance unless it screams loudly enough to be noticed. Jessica wasn't planning on screaming. She had no desire to make a scene. She just wanted to honor her mother in private. But fate doesn't always wait for us to feel ready. Subscribe our channel for more powerful stories about love, self-growth, and human connection, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey. One morning, the hotel was buzzing. A major conference was underway. The CEO of a powerful international company, Adrian Miles, was staying there. He was the kind of man who had reshaped markets before 35, a strategic thinker known for disrupting norms. Staff were on edge. Orders were barked. Jessica was assigned to clean the 14th floor, the one housing several high-profile guests from China. When the supervisor made the assignment, she added a snide comment. "At least the guests won't have to deal with her trying to speak English." Jessica bit her tongue. It stung, but she was used to being underestimated. Sometimes people don't just overlook you, they actively put you down, afraid of the light you might carry. But life has a strange sense of timing. Later that day, as Jessica cleaned the executive lounge, she overheard a voice growing increasingly frantic behind a closed door. It was Adrian. He was on a business call, clearly struggling. The deal, it turned out, was with a Chinese conglomerate, and things were going south fast due to a language gap. "Is there anyone here who speaks Mandarin?" he nearly shouted. "This deal is falling apart." Jessica froze. Her heart pounded. This was her moment, the one she had never asked for, but somehow always feared. Could she do it? Could she walk through that door? announce her hidden talent, and be taken seriously? The thought of it made her palms sweat. She turned toward the hallway, ready to disappear like she always did. But then she saw herself reflected in the polished elevator doors, small, hunched, invisible. And in that fleeting moment, she didn't see herself at all. She saw her mother, and something inside her cracked open. She stepped forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Miles," she said softly. I, I speak Mandarin. I can help." What happened next didn't feel real. She translated the conversation. With calm precision, she untangled misunderstandings, clarified intentions, and bridged two worlds. For 15 minutes, the shy cleaner became the only person in the room who could save the company millions. And she did. Adrian was stunned. He thanked her. She vanished before the adrenaline faded. That's where most stories would end, with a brief hero moment quickly forgotten. But this story was only beginning. The next day, Jessica showed up to work as if nothing had happened. She didn't expect praise or recognition. In her mind, it had been a one-time thing, a useful coincidence. Maybe he'd already forgotten her name. Maybe he hadn't even noticed it in the first place. But when she was reassigned to the same floor and told to prepare the conference room for another Miles Industries meeting, her stomach twisted with dread. Was something wrong? Had she overstepped? She was adjusting chairs when the door opened, and in walked Adrian Miles, flanked by two hotel managers and Chloe the supervisor, who'd never even looked her in the eye unless giving an order. Adrian's gaze settled on Jessica. "I had an interesting experience yesterday," he said calmly. "One of your staff single-handedly saved a multi-million-dollar deal." The room fell silent. Jessica wanted to disappear. She didn't want attention. She didn't want judgment. But Adrian wasn't asking, he was affirming. She translated complex business dialogue flawlessly, he continued. If she hadn't stepped forward, the deal would have collapsed. The managers looked baffled. "I'm not aware of any official translators on staff," one replied. "She's not a translator," Chloe said, attempting damage control. "She's a cleaner." Jessica could feel the weight of that label pressing on her chest. Cleaner. As if that was all she could ever be. As if that meant she had nothing else to offer. "Miss Parker," Adrian asked, "would you mind demonstrating your Chinese proficiency?" Just a quick example. It was a test, a public one. Jessica's nightmare. But something shifted. The same stillness that had steadied her the day before returned. She nodded, then spoke fluidly, translating a phrase Adrian gave her. Perfect tones, confident delivery. There was no doubt. "How long have you studied?" he asked. 3 years. Self-taught. And that's when the room changed. Adrian didn't just compliment her, he offered her a position. He was heading to Shanghai for high-level negotiations and wanted Jessica to accompany him as a translator and cultural liaison. If successful, he said they could explore a permanent position within his company. Jessica's mind reeled. Surely there were better candidates. Surely she wasn't qualified. She was just a cleaner. Just someone who'd studied in secret. But Adrian interrupted her spiral. "You are not just," anything he said. "You're remarkably talented and have been underestimated, including by yourself." There was nothing dramatic about the moment. No epic music, no teary montage. Just a quiet truth offered plainly. And sometimes that's all it takes. Let's pause here to reflect. How often do we measure ourselves by the roles others assign us? By the uniform we wear, the job title on our badge, or the assumptions strangers make in passing? There's a story I once heard about a subway violinist in Washington, D.C., who played in a train station wearing jeans and a baseball cap. Thousands walked by, a few dropped coins. No one stopped. Hours later, the world learned that the man was Joshua Bell, one of the greatest violinists alive. He'd sold out a concert hall for $200 a seat just days earlier. Why didn't they notice? Because context matters. People often can't recognize brilliance unless it comes wrapped in the packaging they expect. But brilliance doesn't require permission to exist. It's there whether you see it or not. Jessica said yes to Adrian's offer. Within weeks, her world transformed. She began training with his chief of staff, Miranda, a poised and seasoned executive who treated Jessica not like a charity case, but a capable woman learning to catch up with her potential. There were crash courses in business communication, Mandarin immersion etiquette workshops, and cultural sensitivity coaching. It was intense, overwhelming, but she rose to the occasion. Jessica wasn't just translating language, she was translating intent, tone, nuance. She noticed things even experienced executives missed. She recognized when silence meant discomfort, when politeness masked refusal, when maybe meant no in business disguised as diplomacy. And in Shanghai, she shined. By day 3, executives requested her presence not just as a translator, but as a bridge, someone who didn't just convey words, but understood how cultures collided and how to soften the impact. Adrian watched her navigate power dynamics with subtlety. He saw the way senior Chinese businessmen listened when she spoke about relationship-first strategies rather than Western efficiency-first tactics. Even Chloe, who had once sent Jessica upstairs to be invisible, had to acknowledge her. "You're doing better than I expected," she said one day with a tight smile. Jessica didn't respond. She didn't need to. Some victories are best left unspoken. At one point, Mr. Young, the Chinese executive whose call Jessica had saved, approached her directly. "I'd like to continue our conversation about regional partnerships," he said. No interpreter needed. Jessica understood perfectly. Her life was no longer quiet, no longer hidden. And yet, even in her tailored blazer and sleek hairstyle, there were moments when she glanced at a hotel corridor and remembered the smell of bleach, the weight of linen carts, the way she used to pass through those spaces like a ghost. But she was no longer a ghost. She had stepped into the light. Let's zoom out again. Jessica's story is exceptional, but not unique. Every day, people suppress what makes them extraordinary because the world has told them their gifts don't belong, that their voice is too soft, their dream too unrealistic, their background too humble. But the truth is, the world is often wrong. A janitor once became a chess champion in New York because someone left a board in a youth center. A young woman who worked retail taught herself app design and ended up building a startup that raised millions. Talent doesn't discriminate, but opportunity often does. That's why stories like Jessica's matter. They remind us that we must create our own openings. We must speak even when our voice trembles, because no one is coming to find your light unless you switch it on first. A year later, the hotel ballroom where Jessica had once served silently was now filled with applause. But this time, the attention wasn't for a CEO or a foreign delegation, it was for her. Jessica stood at the podium with poise, her voice steady, her presence undeniable. The same hotel staff who used to pass by her now leaned in to listen. Chloe sat in the back, arms crossed but silent. Miranda smiled proudly in the front row. Adrian, relaxed and confident beside Mr. Young, looked on as if everything was unfolding exactly as he knew it would. "I used to believe I didn't belong in rooms like this," Jessica said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "I thought value came from titles, from being invited in, from people seeing something in you. But the truth is, we all carry something inside us that the world hasn't seen yet." There was no bitterness in her voice, only truth. Only clarity. Invisibility, she continued, isn't just how people treat you, it's how you treat yourself. I spent years cleaning rooms telling myself I wasn't enough, that my gift was just a hobby, that fluency was for other people, not girls like me. But then came a moment, a single phone call, where I had to choose whether to stay hidden or speak up. I chose to speak. Her words echoed. You could feel the silence deepen, the kind of stillness that comes when people recognize a piece of themselves in someone else's truth. That moment, she added, wasn't a miracle. It was a match, a spark, and I had to be the one to strike it. When the applause returned, it felt earned, not just for the transformation, but for the courage it took to admit she'd been hiding and the resolve it took to stop. After the event, Jessica stood outside on the balcony, looking at the city skyline. The same skyline that once felt untouchable now felt like possibility. Henry, the security guard who had once believed in her before she believed in herself, joined her with a grin. Heard you got a standing ovation, he teased. You heard everything, she smiled. I pay attention, he said, to people the world usually ignores. Jessica nodded. That mattered. That you did. Scared, he asked, sensing the way her hand gripped the railing. She nodded again, more slowly. Yeah, a little. What if I'm not what they think I am? Henry shrugged. Fear and excitement feel the same. Only difference is what you do with them. Everyone's scared when they start walking into rooms they were once cleaning. What matters is that you keep walking. What Henry said holds weight far beyond Jessica's story. For every person listening right now, if you've ever second-guessed whether you're ready, whether you're good enough, whether your background disqualifies you, let this be your reminder: nobody is ever ready. But readiness is not a prerequisite for growth. Showing up is. In the weeks that followed, Jessica's life didn't just level up professionally, it shifted internally. She no longer questioned her seat at the table. She prepared for Shanghai not just with documents and research, but with a renewed understanding of her own worth. The plane ride was long and the stakes were high, but when she stepped into those boardrooms, she didn't shrink. She interpreted, she advocated, she corrected cultural misunderstandings before they turned into diplomatic tension. And for the first time, she wasn't just translating for someone else, she was speaking for herself. There was a moment on the second day of meetings when Adrian asked for her input, not as a translator, but as an advisor. What's your read on this proposal, he asked. Jessica hesitated only a moment. I think it misses key cultural elements. In Chinese business, relationships come before efficiency. If we push too hard on timelines, we might lose trust. Adrian nodded thoughtfully. That's why I brought you. He didn't mean because she spoke the language. He meant because she understood the space between words, and that made all the difference. Even Chloe, who was sent along as an observer for the hotel partnership, couldn't deny it. You're doing better than I expected, she said dryly one morning. Jessica only smiled. She had nothing to prove to Chloe. Not anymore. Let's anchor this story with another real-world reminder. In 2020, a young man named Ahmad Jude, born in a refugee camp and raised amid civil war, became a ballet dancer on some of Europe's biggest stages. He learned to dance barefoot on broken concrete. People mocked him, doubted him, but when he danced, he became undeniable. Stories like his, and like Jessica's, remind us of a truth society often forgets. Talent is not bound by origin. Potential doesn't wear a uniform. And dreams once dared often lead to the most unthinkable destinations. Back in Chicago, Jessica began mentoring others. Not formally, just quietly backstage. She helped other hotel staff apply for scholarships. She passed along Henry's words. She noticed the dishwasher who practiced piano on breaks, the bellhop who painted stunning portraits. She paid attention. One night as she stood with Henry at a post-conference reception, she handed him a small leather-bound book. What's this? He asked. Proverbs, she said. It was Mom's. I used to read it before every practice session. Thought you'd like it. He opened it to a folded page. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, he read aloud, nodding slowly. Jessica looked out at the skyline. Mine started with speaking one sentence. I didn't think it would matter, but it did. And that's the lesson I want to leave with you today. Your gifts are not small. Your voice is not irrelevant. Sometimes we wait for permission, for titles, for recognition before we allow ourselves to believe we matter. But life doesn't work that way. The world shifts not when someone else opens the door for you, but when you knock, when you speak, when you decide you will no longer live in the shadows of your own potential. So whether you're a cleaner or a coder, a cashier or a CEO, ask yourself, what have I kept hidden out of fear that I wouldn't be enough? And then dare just once to show it. Because sometimes the most powerful gift you can give the world is to be seen. And if Jessica's story stirred something in you, an old dream, a hidden talent, a quiet ambition, don't let it stay buried. This is your sign. Light the match. Let the world see you. Thanks for staying with us until the end. If this story moved you, made you think, or just gave you hope, consider sharing it with someone who might need it today. And remember, the best stories don't always start with love. They start with a moment of courage. Subscribe our channel for more powerful stories about love, self-growth, and human connection. And turn on the bell so you don't miss the next emotional journey.